Welcome, everyone, to the LinkedIn Live today. It's named a Recruiters Roundtable. It's kind of morphed a little bit into something different than that. Wendy Schoen was supposed to be on last time, and we had to reschedule it. But based on that, I wanted to bring this discussion to other people as well. Ellie Amder and I have known each other for a while. He does career coaching, and he's written a column for now probably more than 1,000 weeks. And I definitely wanted to pick his brain about things. But I'd love it if each of you, Wendy, Dan, Barbara, and Elliot, just introduce yourselves, just because you can do it better than me. So I'll start with you, Wendy, at the top.
Sure. I am a executive recruiter in the legal industry. I recruit for lawyers in either big law or mid-sized law firms, or still do some general counsel searches, but I don't do as much of that anymore. And I also advise general counsels on what to do next in their searching for a new job.
Okay. And Dan, I've known for quite a bit too, from all different places. Dan, a fellow New Jersey person.
Ladies first.
And go ahead, Dan. I know you're actually looking for a job.
Ladies first.
Okay, Barbara, go ahead.
Hi, Kenneth. Thanks for having me again. I am a longtime job seeker and somebody who's been very involved in job search networks. And I've been blessed to be working with Kenneth at LHH now for just over a year, doing as a professional branding specialist, helping people maximize their resumes and their LinkedIn profiles. And it's just always a pleasure to be here. Thanks, Kenneth.
Dan, is it okay now?
Yes, I mean, unless you wanted to go age before beauty, but I don't know if. Hi everyone. Normally I don't sound like 100-year smoker, so I apologize ahead of time. My name is Dan Roth. I neurodiverse, as you can see behind me. I come from sort of a multitude of backgrounds. I was a senior recruiter for Amazon. In their physical stores division, hiring high-level executives and running the DEI division, diversity, equity, inclusion. And I'm currently on the market as I was part of that layoffs last year in the tech industry. So I come at it from both sides and sort of try to provide expertise the best I can, although I'll never go head-to-head with Wendy because she's too direct even for me.
Oh.
And Ellie, what about you?
I don't know. What about me?
Want to introduce yourself? We all know. We all know who you are.
Well, then it seems that I need no introduction. I'm everything that Ken said I am, and then a little bit less. But I've been an independent career coach for 27 years now. It's my third of my career, I suppose. I've also been a freelance columnist on careers and job market observations since 2003 in the Record, now Gannett Gatehouse, and whoever owns them today. And I've been writing for Forbes.com for about 4 years now, which is a whole lot of fun because I write about anything within the scope of careers, job market, creativity, innovation, leadership. I'm having a ball.
Nice.
So I guess what I'd like to start with, if it's okay, is you, Dan, you and Barbara are both in different parts of job search. So are there things that you wanted to share, or questions that you had, or things you wanted to bring up from your background? Because I think that would be really beneficial for both Wendy and Ellie to understand that, because we all speak from our perspectives, but it's not the same as someone who's actually going through the process. So ladies first, Barbara.
And I too, Dan, am on the neurodiverse scale, and I do much better with specific questions. But the one thing that I will answer is what I see over and over and over is the old school, what I always did, what we knew. Your resume is your job history. And that's not what it is anymore. So that's one of the big things that I see, is teaching people that it's all about your relevance, what's relevant for the role that you're going for. And I don't know if kind of what you were going for, Kenneth, but that's a big thing that I see over and over that I thought to mention.
Well, I think, Dan, I think we have all different challenges, or you would do in a job search, whether it's trying to match up or whether it's trying to figure out how to actually do things. And there's a frustration aspect to it too. So I don't want to throw too many things at you, Dan, but I would love to get what your feelings are, because then I'd like to have maybe Ellie and Wendy kind of chime in a little bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, so it's a little bit weird for me. And the reason I say that is, for those that don't know me, 6 years ago, I created a post connecting job seekers to recruiters on LinkedIn that generated 100,000 views every week and 1,000 comments for 2 years. So for the bulk majority of the last 6 years, I was the one that everybody went to for job seeking advice. I built a 13,000 person community. I was named JobScan named me one of the top job search experts to follow. So, and then I went to Amazon, where I was specifically asked to be part of the team because I'm a community builder and I do things differently. So I actually teach recruitment. And because I come from that, when I first lost my job, I was a little bit like, oh, I know what to do. I know where to go. I knew, like, I was prepared when layoffs started happening. I got some amazing resume writers to help me with my resume, nationally certified. I've spoken for the NWCA. But then what happened, and the real learning point that I found is, one, you have to be aware of what the market is. I was doing diversity everything for Amazon, but when I got laid off, that sector really fell by the wayside. But I felt like, as a cis white male, I had to stick with it for longer than I should have. And I had to look at different areas. And then the longer things went on, the more I realized, even for somebody that's seen as a quote unquote expert in the field, once you start having those issues, you go into that desperation mode where you think, I need to change this all the time. And it's at that point you start making mistakes. So I don't necessarily, I know this is a long way to answer the question, but there's a variety of ways I could say, my specific job search is harder, but I think at the end of the day, whether you're a recruiter, whether you're seen as an expert, we all have those moments from a mental health perspective where it dips to the point where we start having those gaps. And that's the point where we have to lean on our community to get us recentered.
Yeah.
So feel free, Wendy or Ellie, to chime in.
I wonder, Dan, if you have tapped all corners of your network. And I think it might behoove you to, one more time, put up in your postings or whatever, just in case I haven't hit all corners of my network. This is my ideal job. This is what I bring to the table, because I am in your network and I have come late to the table and I have not taken you to my network.
You bring up something interesting, and I was waiting, so I wanted to make sure I didn't interrupt you. I'm going to be very direct for a second. And part of the reason that you didn't see that, and I haven't done it as much, is because, and one of the big issues I have with the job market is that you could have the same role with 10 different titles and 10 different companies, which, pardon my French, pisses me off, because there needs to be uniformity. And because of that, like, when I look at the job titles and I see, okay, people business partner, which is the intersection of employee needs and client relationships, is the closest that comes to what I do best, which is strategy. And I put that out there may be half my audience that doesn't know what that is. So then you keep on rethinking and trying to realign instead of sticking to what that. So that was part of it. the other part, and just to your point, is one of the things I just started to do recently is I saw, okay, well, I have 900 people that are considered recruiters in my network, and I've been sending messages to 10 per day, so that I eventually reach all. Now, I'm not going to reach all the 900 because, coming from Amazon, I may have 200 recruiters that work for Amazon, so I'm not going to send 200 messages. I'm not vicious like that, but I am trying to work through and be intelligent with the way they put it. That being said, and being neurodiverse, I always sort of explain my point, and I think Barbara knows where I'm coming with that. So please don't take that as an excuse. It's just, this is my process. You're 100% right. I think it gets to a point where you think, how much is too much? How many times can I say, hey, I'm desperate, that it comes across as desperate? So how do you find new ways to go about it? And this is where I say leaning on the network and being like, okay, well, I need to center myself before I go down that road again. Really comes into play.
Well,
Excuse me just one second, folks. I've got an emergency here that I've got to take care of. I should be back in about 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, take your time.
I'm not going anywhere. I'll be right back.
No problem.
it depends on how the person who is sharing you with their network or introducing you does so.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a network that is made up of recruiters and executive coaches and of business development people and a wide network that I never expected to ever have when I joined LinkedIn. But it's because I grew my network intentionally by commenting on posts of other people who had a wide variety of interests and whatever. Okay, whatever. But and they all share people, whatever, differently. Okay. But the people who are coaches and the people who are involved in the job search world are very specific in how they share people, and they put up in a post, in a regular ordinary content type post. I've got a fabulous person. I have no ties to this person in terms of money. Please understand, this is not a money person share. This is I know a fabulous person. I want to get his information out far and wide, or her information out far and wide. Does anybody know of any links, needs, whatever? This is a person. Bah. And they post it.
I mean, I think the challenge a lot of us have, and I'll speak from our perspective, is there's so much information out there, and there's so much, I want to say misinformation, but not really great information, that it's really hard to know what works and what doesn't work. I mean,
I know.
If I was looking for a job right now, I mean, and I've actually been rejected for jobs I applied for now, which I'm very qualified for, and it's absolutely frustrating because the longer you're out, also, it's harder to know what to say and what not to say. And then there's the whole emotional aspect too, that has to grade on it too. And I don't want to speak too much for others here. I can only go back to my experiences. It's like, you have all the right tools, you have all the right skills. Why the blank are you not reaching out to me?
Well, look, I mean, I also, if I know of someone who is actively or could be a perfect match for, or a perfect employer for a Dan, I would immediately reach out to them and say, listen, I got a great candidate. You have got to see this person. I don't care whether you're actively looking or not. This is someone you need to hire. That's a different way of reaching out.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot.
Right.
So 2 quick things, and I don't want to monopolize the conversation. One, but I think that it's important to point out, especially for the job seekers out there. One is going to be a controversial opinion, but if you know me, that's nothing new. this could be condensed a lot when you're reaching out. And the reason why a lot of people won't see you is for what I'm about to say. LinkedIn specifically, if you put out a post saying that you lost a job, you're going to get 1,000 comments. However, a lot of people react out of selfishness. Now, they have good intention. They want to be supportive. But if you have 1,000 people reacting and 500 commenting, how many of those 500 could actually help? Instead of saying, hey, I want to just chat and talk to you about my network on the hopes and a dream, when job seekers are inherently without hope at that moment, it makes more sense to very strategically say, okay, well, if I don't have, I may support you, but if I don't have any direct leads, how is that helping you by placing an additional comment? One more thing, Wendy, and then I'll shut up.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think disperses a lot of this is, like, for me, unemployment ain't jack, and unemployment doesn't last. So at a certain point in my job search, I had to scratch around to figure out how the heck am I going to pay my bills.
Yeah.
So now I'm a full-time parent. I'm a full-time job seeker. I'm trying to clean the house because my wife's taking care of the majority of the bills, and I'm trying to find ways to make money. This stretches people extremely thin. So that's another directive that's like, well, like, and then I'll just add one thing to it, because I just had this conversation with my wife last night. I said, I got frustrated by something. I said, Jen, my wife's name, I don't feel like I have the right to ask or push back on anything because I'm not bringing in anything right now. It doesn't matter. And that's a communication issue when you have a relationship. Wendy, I know exactly where you're going with that.
Yep.
But what I'm saying is, even if I did have that conversation, that's an internal fear that I have.
Yeah.
And this is all part of the cluster that is the job seeking process.
Yeah.
And if I can throw in for somebody like myself, and I know there are a few of us out there. First of all, with my neurodiversities, I can't remember my past, and I can't imagine a future. So all I have is the now. And I have so many different things I'm interested in, and I enjoy them all. So I don't have a career path. I don't have a job title. I've been a Jill of all trades. I've done a little bit of everything. So when it comes to a job search, first of all, I've got to figure out what I want to do, which could be anything. And then I have to try to make it look like I'm an expert at that when I've done a little bit of everything. So it's really hard to focus down when you don't have a focus. And that's 58 years of not ever having a focus. So it's just one more layer that makes it very difficult. Like I said, I know I'm not the only one out there like that. There are some of us, but we are a minority. When you've got a job title, or you've got a career path, it makes it easier to focus on your network and to say, this is what I'm looking for, and things like that. So we all have lots of different struggles, and it's not easy. And Dan,
Well, you
I'm sorry.
said that you can't imagine your future and you can't remember your past or something like that. You aren't old enough to be able to say you can't remember something. I am.
Yeah, no, I have neurodiversities. I literally have no memories that I can place myself in. No.
Well, the more important part of your comment, and the one that I find
Whoa. I'm sorry. I have to pause this very quick. I understand you're not trying to be rude, but saying that is gaslighting her. Because neurodiversity is a very real condition that we deal with. And I just want to make sure we're being respectful here.
I appreciate that very much, Dan. I'm okay with you, Eli. It's all good, but I understand where you're coming from, Dan, and I do appreciate that.
Well, look, no offense meant, but we're talking the issue of relevance here. And to what have you been relevant in the past? And that should not be outside of the scope of your memory. I have a sign on my desk, which was given to me by one of my clients after we achieved a great deal of success. And the sign says this. You may have seen it.
I like that. Let me ask you this, Eli, is it Ellie or Eli? I'm sorry.
It's Ellie.
Ellie. Okay. Ellie, what jobs have you had that you really liked?
Well, with the exception of a couple, all of them. I didn't like my bosses necessarily, but I liked my job.
Right. So I have this, I can't connect to anything. So I've liked everything, but I can't remember it. I just know that I liked it. And I have a knowing. I know a lot. Kenneth, I'll tell you, I know a lot, right, Kenneth?
Well, how are you going to tell your next employer what your relevance is?
That's not the issue. The issue is, who's my next employer going to be? Because I don't know what to be when I grow up. And I have my resume is 5 pages long with a list of all the things that I've done, but that doesn't help me figure out what my next job is going to be. It's very hard for somebody like me to focus on what the next job is going to be.
Are you serious? Is your resume 5 pages long?
No, it's probably closer to 6, because Ellie, it's everything that I've ever done. I went back to all of my my previous resumes. I went back to my I saved all this stuff. I didn't know why, because I didn't know I had these neurodiversities. But every time I got, what do they call it? When you get a review at the end of the year and they tell you, I saved all of that stuff. So I was able to put a resume together. I don't remember doing anything on my resume, but I know I did it. And I know I have that knowledge.
Wendy, did you want to chime in?
I can't help anybody like that.
Right. Right.
What I'll chime in and say is that neurodiversity is a very, very wide ranging, and my neurodiversity is going to be different than Barbara's. So for me, when my kids were born, that's became my why. And I started getting very good at knowing what I wanted to do.
Right.
And every step of the way I've progressed. So I know exactly what I'm good at, what I'm passionate about. I know my purpose. Not everybody's going to like me. Most times, half of the people want me there and half the time people don't, because I'm very direct and honest.
Right.
But I could sleep at night because I know that I'm setting a good example for my children.
Right.
That's not going to be every single person. My resume is 2 pages, or maybe 2.5, 3. I have a 1-page version of that resume. But if you actually look back, for the formative years, for my first 10 years out of college, I was job hopping because it took me till I got to my 30s and a major event happening, almost losing my wife during delivery and then having my twins, to understand what my purpose is.
Right.
So there's a large variety of things that come into play here, but that doesn't make my experience lesser than Barbara's or lesser than Wendy's. It doesn't make Ellie's experience better than Kenneth's or Wendy's. It's all individual, and we start clustering those together. That's when we run into problems. So we need to stop labeling.
There is no one size fits all strategy.
Right. And that was,
And that's one of the things.
Nor should there be a concern for whose experience is better than the others. I fully believe that whether you're talking about yourself as an individual, as a job seeker, or as a member of a team as an employee, or whoever you might be, the worst thing you can do is compare yourself to others.
absolutely.
The best thing you can do is compare yourself to yourself and try to be better than you were today, tomorrow.
But is that ignoring human nature?
Pardon?
Then this is a direct question for you. Is that ignoring human nature?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not at all. We have an innate drive towards growth. The moment a baby is born, that baby is trying to figure out how to get to the next day, how to get to the next stage. As we progress through our education, our formal education and our informal education, the rest of our lives and our jobs and our careers, we have an innate drive towards growth. Now, how we connect with that and how we realize that is the business we're talking about here.
And that's sort of what I'm getting at, because I never like to be the smartest person in the room. I don't think anybody does.
I never had that opportunity.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a couple times, but that was sort of by default. But my point in saying that is because I like surrounding myself by people smarter than me. I'm not necessarily comparing myself, but I'm looking at them and saying, what do they have that I aspire to be like? What can I learn? How can I grow by being around this person? And at first, it could matriculate as jealousy. It can matriculate as a lot of different things. But when you have that self-awareness factor and understand it's not a competition, then you can compare. But the comparison isn't done in the formal way that we typically think about it. It's done in a productive manner that allows us to elevate ourselves. it's the same thing when we're looking at relationships. I'm not going to talk about heterosexual, whatever the relationship is. My wife is smarter than me in a ton of different areas, and I aspire to be more like my wife. She's my hero, and that's okay. And I accept that's okay.
And you're smarter than her in some things too.
Yep.
I guarantee it.
Yep.
Exactly.
Well, Albert Einstein used to kind of jokingly but seriously say that everyone has his own genius, but if you ask a fish to climb a tree, he's going to feel like an idiot. And we have to tap into our own genius.
So how do you portray that genius when you're trying to reach out to a recruiter without, whether it's on a resume or on a LinkedIn, without coming across the wrong way? Because you do want to sell yourself, but at the same time, you also want to make sure that you're putting yourself in the best light. And I don't have the answer so much.
Well, Ken, I don't think the resume is a place to try to convince somebody who has not met you and who doesn't know who you are that you're a genius in some regard or another. I think the job of the resume, which is a communication device and nothing more, is to tell the reader that there are things about you that he needs to know. And to convince, along with the cover letter, by the way, let's not overlook that, to convince the reader to pick up the phone and call you and say, I just read your resume. I'd like to meet with you.
So what do you think, Wendy?
Your resume is a marketing vehicle. Okay. And depending on the recruiter and how they function, for me, as I said to you, I either have to have an open job, or you have to be of a specific kind of lawyer for whom I can call the law firms and see if they are looking to find that particular kind of lawyer.
So let me ask you this.
Outside of this very narrow strip, very, very, very narrow strip.
So if a job seeker is looking for a job, so if Dan or Barbara have an expertise and they want to apply for a job, yes, they should reach out to someone with you if you have the specific background. But is there a best way, besides letting the world know on LinkedIn, that they can put themselves in the best light? I mean, I try to do posting and commenting and engagement. I try to meet with people, but there's so many people out there, and there's so many things to do.
Wendy, you sound like I do.
Target companies.
You said that a resume is a marketing tool.
Yeah.
Do you have any feel for what percentage of the hires that your clients make come through you as a real live in the flesh recruiter?
That come through me as opposed to any other means?
Yeah.
40%.
How much?
Hey,
40%.
Ellie,
Wow.
could I just add something to that real quick? Coming from Amazon, the bulk majority of the hires we made were from outbound outreach. So they were people that were currently in jobs that we seeked out, which is typically how it's done in my experience in big tech. So all of them were through that direct line of correspondence as opposed to inbound.
Well, Dan, if I remember what you said about yourself, that you are recruiting higher level executives.
That's where I got to very shortly after.
Okay.
I was brought into Amazon as a technical recruiter for L4 through L5. However, my differentiator, my UVP, was that I have a 45,000 person following. I had 2,000 recruiter connections, 500 career coaches. So because I was a community builder, my skill was I brought in those leads from those sources.
Right.
And that's what differentiated me. So
Right.
very quickly, I got asked to hire at a higher level.
Huh.
Well,
But you have to understand. What I'm saying to you is that it's not that. Never mind. That
what goes on at that level, Dan, is very different from the masses. But to your point, Wendy, about a resume being a marketing tool, in the age of the ATS, I think it has become less and less of a marketing tool.
I disagree. Oh,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. No, Wendy, you started to say something. I was just quicker.
No. Most of the time, my candidates don't go through the ATS.
Well, that's why I asked you that first question.
Okay. Most of the time, my candidates don't go through the ATS. Okay. Most of the time, even if I'm applying to in-house positions, a general counsel's resume does not go through an ATS.
Right.
In that case, it is a marketing tool. In the case of 99% of the people who are in the job market, and there are 165 million people in the labor force, a resume is less and less these days of a marketing tool, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Barbara.
Okay. So in my little world here that we all know is different, it is absolutely a marketing tool, but it's not getting the use that it used to. It's not being used the way it used to. And we know that only 11% of jobs are found through job boards. So
Oh God, no. God, no. Job boards and posted job openings, they're black hole suck-ups.
Absolutely.
Oh God, no.
Right.
Barbara, I don't know where you get the 11%. I doubt it's that high.
It's an LHH statistic. That's what's on my LHH slide.
Oh my
We
God.
know less than 11% get it through jobs. It's all about networking.
Yep.
So the way I
Within
got my
job
role,
market is where people get jobs.
the way I got my role, and I had to apply with my ATS resume, but I also networked my way in.
Yep.
And I use that in my group. I tell the story in my group of how my network helped me to get this job. Somebody saw it posted on somebody's LinkedIn. The VP just posted it. My connection, who I just adore, she's helped me with my job search. So I've helped her create apps and all. We had this synchronicity thing going. So she saw that and she called me out on Carolyn, the VP's page, and said, "Hey, Barbara, weren't we just talking about this? Oh, Natalie, I love what you do." So then I went through the process. I did the research. I applied through the ATS. I found out that it was a legit system, but that somebody at LHH had posted that they were so glad somebody called because she didn't make it through the ATS and her resume would not have gotten seen, even though all of this was done right. So when I did apply, I applied through the ATS. Then I reached out to the VP directly because now I'm on her. And I said, "Hey, just wanted to let you know, I'm excited about this. And I noticed that so-and-so said this one didn't get through and I wanted to make sure somebody saw my resume."
That's exactly what I tell people who are applying to who see a job opening. I tell them, if you're going to apply to a job opening, do it, but then find out, go to LinkedIn, network your way, figure out who the hiring manager is, and then find out through your network how you can network your way in and get somebody to walk your resume into the hiring manager so that your resume goes from the 800th resume on the pile to somewhere in the top 25, because whoever's hiring is not looking past the top 25 resumes.
Right.
Period.
Go ahead, Dan.
So two things with that.
But that's in-house.
Yeah, it's 100% in-house. One is there's too much emphasis placed on, well, three actually. One is I think that job seekers need to understand Boolean strings in order to find the right people. That's just a random piece of fact.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that I hate how many people say you need to reach out to the recruiter. BS. A recruiter most times isn't going to have, recruiters don't mean much, if I'm being 100%, unless they're a full cycle like Wendy. But the vast majority, I'd much rather reach out to somebody doing the actual work in the role who I could speak that tongue to, because once I earn their respect, and they say to their boss, "Hey, this person knows their stuff."
I said hiring manager. I didn't say recruiter.
No, I wasn't responding to you. I was speaking
No,
in general. Yeah,
but I specifically said hiring manager, not
Yeah.
recruiter.
yeah, and that's 100% because that employee will take it to the hiring manager. That's how you bypass part of it. I remember when Kenneth and I met, which was in the early days of Clubhouse, there were these
Yes.
recruitment rooms, and 1,000 people were coming in, and all these different people were putting in their referral codes. And I called BS on it right away because what was happening is referrals don't mean as much as people think, but if 1 out of 1,000 happen to hit, that person was getting $5,000. But you know how who that doesn't work for? Recruiters who are part of HR that can't get anything on the back end. So this was all happening. It was all a complete mess. And really the last 5 or 6 years have done more harm than good within the job seeking. Last thing I'm going to say, and I'm not going to get into the argument about whether resumes are a marketing tool. I don't like resumes. What I like even less is cover letters. I think they're a pile of garbage that should be outlawed.
Okay.
There's so much bias associated with them that unless you're a small company, you can take the time to read. I just think you're asking somebody to do additional work without compensation when you're asking them to figure out 1,000 different ways. And if they don't get 5 responses, they're going to be trying something else. And if that doesn't work, they're going to be trying something else. I don't feel like throwing darts at a wall to find a job.
Okay. That is a whole conversation I don't want to get into right now, but I will. Okay?
Okay.
I want to talk about this more. Okay. You are talking about the last half of the gray market. Okay. You have completely ignored the first half of the gray market. When you talk about the hidden market, this is the last half of it. The first half of it is you start out your job search and you figure out your target market, your target companies and your target market. And then you go to LinkedIn and you look at all the people who work for the company and work in the department that you want to get into and work the jobs that you want. And then you start looking them up on LinkedIn and you start following them and you read what they post and you start commenting on the things that they post. Intelligent commentary. And then you keep going and you comment on the things that they post and the people in the department and you intelligently comment. And sooner or later, they comment back and you start conversations. And over time, you start conversations and they get used to you and they start to know who you are. And you start conversations and they get used to you and you have conversations with them. People like to hire people they know. So when a job opens up in a department and they say, "Oh, you know who we should talk to? Susie. I thought she was, I thought I heard something along the lines that she was looking for a new job. This would be perfect for her. We know Susie. We've been talking to her for over a year now. We like the way she thinks. Let's reach out to Susie."
I mean, I think one thing that,
Or if we post a job and Susie brings up her resume and comes up and says, "Jim, that job that Mary just posted, I really am interested in that. Could you take my resume over to Mary and see if maybe she'll consider me for the job?" And Mary goes, "It didn't even dawn on me. You're right. Mary would be perfect for this job." Mm-hmm. That's how the hidden job market works.
I also think what's important is that, and I know we talk about this a lot amongst ourselves, is repurposing the same content, because different people are going to see the post at different times. You have a moving target, so you can't assume that everyone knows what you're going through. So you may have to do the same type of post every month or so because you just don't know who's joined LinkedIn when. And I think that's a part of it, because we all make assumptions about different things. And like, I know everyone here on this panel, but no one else may, because at that moment they may not be on LinkedIn, or they may not be looking for something. They may have no no background. So I kind of look at LinkedIn every once in a while. I have a new group every day or so that I'm going to try to reach out to, even if it's the same content or the same thing.
I just want to point out that what Wendy said is the only way I've gotten interviews over the last year and a half. When I got into the job market, I had a very sterling reputation, and I'm not saying that with ego. I'm saying that's was recognized. Yet I'm sitting here having had under 10 interviews over the last 16 months. And every single one of the interviews I did get was doing exactly what Wendy said. That or somebody had seen my work and knew I was consistent, knew I was intelligent, and brought my resume to their boss.
Mhm.
And that's how I got the interview. Now, did I get any of those roles? No. I had an interview with Kickstarter. Great interview. Loved the interviewer. 3,500 applicants. I had another with a different organization. The role, I was more senior to the role than what they were looking for. I had another one. I had two more with ServiceNow. The senior lead recruiter is one of my biggest supporters. She sat me down for that interview. That is how I wound up getting those, along with finding those right people. So I just want to implore the fact that Wendy doesn't need my backing on what she's saying. She's a brilliant individual, but I did want to confirm that exactly what she is saying is the only way it's worked.
And I don't get paid when people do that.
Right.
Dan, you said you've had 10 interviews or fewer than 10 interviews.
Yeah.
And you're
And there's
looking
reason for
at as examples, you're looking at the interviews you had and figuring out why you got those interviews.
I know why I got the interviews.
Okay, wait a second. That's not where I'm going.
Okay.
What you exhibit there is something that statistical analysts call survival bias. You're looking at the reason that certain samples survived. You're not looking at the reason that others didn't. Now, you may be doing that, but you didn't reflect that in your statement. And I'm going to pin something on you that you said about cover letters being garbage that should be outlawed or something like that. I wonder how many interviews you did not get because you didn't send the cover letter.
Can I explain that point real
It's a
quick?
whole
In a second.
conversation that could take 3 hours.
Yeah, well,
In-
so
in a
let
second,
me
in a
let me just once you're done, I just want to I'll make it very short.
The way we figure out what we're doing wrong is to find out what we're doing wrong and to look at it. Now, if you've gotten 10 interviews or fewer, if that were me, I would be disappointed in that also. But I would look at what I have not done and try to make the attachment as to whether or not that had anything to do with the results. I think in your case, it very well might.
So the reason I didn't get into that side of it is because it's a much longer conversation and I don't want to monopolize the time here. As far as the cover letter goes, my podcast, my LinkedIn URL, everything is called Mental Health Motivated, and there's a reason for it. Cover letters are inherently biased. They stress people out. They create unnecessary pressure, and the vast majority are never even looked at. Now, I come from big tech. I come from healthcare, where it's larger scale organizations that those recruiters traditionally don't have the time to do it. And it's not even a requirement when it comes to places like Amazon and Google. At smaller organizations, that may be different. I'm very well aware of that.
And different industries
Yes.
may be different.
Yes. But everything that I do and everything that I say comes at it from looking from an inclusive perspective. And I'm not just talking about United States here. I'm talking about global. I've worked in 35 different countries and supported people in over 40. I funded a career accelerator classroom in Nigeria. I know what the global outlook is and what those different requirements are. and cover letters should not be made required. Period. End of story. And this is a sword I'll fall on because of the amount of horrendous stress it places people under. And I don't care if they're using AI or not. To me, and I'm not trying to be hard-headed or disagreeable, but this is my sword. I don't believe they should be there.
I'm not going to get into that.
No, I'm not either. Everybody seems to think that's another conversation. I don't, but that's good enough for me at the moment.
But Ellie, if you ever want to get into the data suggesting why I'm not getting those, I can certainly do that, because for me, I have to be self-aware. So I understand that dichotomy and what those things are. And you kind of just heard it.
No, come on, put them up.
No, to me, this isn't a fight.
No, I know.
That's what I said. It's a whole other conversation. Depends on the industry.
There's so many.
I just wanted to have a conversation today, just to kind of throw things out there and just discuss things. I mean, we're not going to save the world or solve everything here.
I was just going to say, Kenneth, I thought we were here to solve the world's problems.
If you're working with a recruiter, you have to know what kind of industry you're in, what kind of recruiter you're in, and what kind of recruiter you're sending your resume to.
Right.
Because it depends on your industry. There's some industries, if you're a project manager and your job can exist in multiple different companies and multiple different industries, send your resume to a recruiter, because they might be able to help you, because they might have jobs in multiple different companies. They might have opportunities available in multiple different companies. But know what your industry is, know what your market is before you send your resume in.
Do you think part of the issue?
I get resumes from attorneys who know better. They know a recruiter's not going to be able to help them, but they still send them in.
They don't know what else to do.
I send them a nice note back that says to them, "I'm sorry, I can't help you, because law firms will not accept your resume to them through me. Sorry."
And back to the whole marketing material thing, which is how this all started. The resume right now, all they want to know about are what your accomplishments are. What have you accomplished? Show me what you've done, so I know that you can do it for me, and then we'll talk.
Right.
I mean, that's the bottom line.
They're not interested in responsibilities. They want to know what your accomplishments were,
exactly,
so that they can extrapolate them into their company and their needs and see if they can work.
exactly.
So I do have a question, and this is sort of off topic, but it's a curiosity that I genuinely don't know the answer to. You go to fill out an application online, you submit your resume.
Yep.
Then it asks you to fill in all the job experience.
Yeah.
I typically delete that and just leave my resume. What's the correct way to do it?
I fill out every line and then attach the resume where they ask me to attach the resume. They're asking for it. Why piss them off?
And that's when it comes to cover letters. If they ask for a cover letter, then you really should send it, because they're looking for it. If they don't ask, it's up to you. If they say don't send it, you better not be sending it, because now you can't follow directions. So
exactly. If they've asked for something, don't not attach it.
What about this, Wendy? What about when they ask, and some of them still have this, what about when they ask questions that aren't legal to ask?
Like
I don't remember.
They ask for your current salary.
Yeah, something like that.
You have to enter something, otherwise the ATS won't accept it.
Right.
What you do is you go into it and you write N/A.
Right.
And get out.
Right.
I'm still having trouble figuring out.
What about when that field has digits that you have to fill in?
Then you write 00000.
Actually, 11111111 is a technical date. So that has worked when the zeros haven't for me.
Yeah,
Dan,
if
you
the
were
zeros
trying to,
don't work, enter
Yeah.
11111111.
Dan, you were asking
Yeah,
something.
so I'm still perplexed why they're asking about sexual orientation and
Mhm.
what you identify as.
Right.
To me, that's nobody's business.
Of
Correct.
course it's not.
Here's something though for me, because I'm old and I know it. I'm 58 years old. I don't hide it. But if you're going to discriminate against me because of my age, I want to know that up front. So I don't want to work for you anyway. And that's the way I look at it. And maybe it's just a self-help mechanism. I don't go on, I don't advertise it, but I'm not going to worry about it. And the same with like the neurodiversity stuff. If people are going to have a problem with that, then they're not the people I want to work with anyway. I had a boss who was like that, and she should have known better. And she wouldn't let me take notes because if you're writing, you're not listening. Well, if I'm not writing, I'm not going to remember. So what do you want me to do? So,
Real quick, Wendy, going back to the point about filling out those applications,
Good.
how many, I guess my question is, how much should you fill out? Like how many jobs back is appropriate before you could stop?
In my the legal world requires that you fill out every job you've had since law school.
interesting.
And I know that's government as well.
The coaches, the executive coaches for the rest of the world suggest that you go back 15 years and no further.
15. Yeah, the LHH best practices is 10 to 15. And the more relevant it is, the more important it is. And usually the more current stuff is more relevant to the role that you're going for. Usually there's always.
I mean, look, Dan, if there's something that's 25 years ago that's completely relevant
Exactly.
to the job you're going for, that's how far back you go.
So I understand that, but I'm talking about the dichotomy between the fact that you have your resume already submitted and then you have the application, which is also requesting. So I'm saying, should it mimic or like within that application, within the digital application, should you only have to put one or two just
The
to give them?
digital application is going to have an absolute meltdown if it doesn't match what's on the paper.
Good to know.
It's a stupid machine.
Yep.
It's not AI. It's a stupid machine. And if it doesn't match what's on the paper, it will have a meltdown. And the meltdown that it's going to have is going to put your resume in the trash.
And theoretically, if it's on your resume, it's relevant. So there's no reason not to put it on. It's the time,
I mean, you're
the
not
time
hiding it.
annoyance.
Who are
Right?
you hiding it from by not putting it out into the digits? It's already on your resume. Who are you hiding it from?
Very quiet, Ellie.
Sorry?
So you're very quiet.
I think we broke him.
Maybe we did.
Oh, sorry, that was the Mets.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have anything to add to the last 10 minutes of this conversation.
Okay.
As I said, I don't do much ATS work because most of what I do goes directly to partner recruiters. or
Of course
to
you
general
don't.
counsel recruiters. But those times when I have had to do portal submissions, what's the point in not adding what they ask for? Who are you hurting? And also, if you don't add what they ask for, it won't accept your submission. So what's your point?
So I'll answer that really quickly. And again, I sort of have to point this out that I'm the exception to the rule in the fact that everything I do is meant to try to be an example for fair practice.
Mm-hmm.
And being neurodiverse, we only have a certain attention span. It becomes extraneous and overly exhausting, more so than it should be, when you have to fill in all of that for every single application when you've already done the work. Like, people are spending, I'm not saying this is right, But people are spending $2,000, $2,500 to get their resumes and cover letters done by
What
professionals.
do you think I feel when I have to fill those forms out?
I understand.
Yeah.
Do you think I really enjoy filling those forms out? That is the least best use of my time, is filling those forms out.
And then you get halfway through and your internet shuts down and you lose everything and you have to start over. And yeah.
Think about it, Dan. Of all the uses of my time, sitting and filling out those forms for an applicant is the single least productive use of my time. But there are law firms that require me to do so, and there are companies that require me to do so. And and my reaction is, why don't you take this resume and have one of your secretaries do it? Why am I, someone who has 2 degrees, 30 years of experience, doing this when you can get a high school person to do it for what, $15 an hour? Why am I doing it? And I think that every single time that I enter one of these things into a system.
And everybody's system is different too. And that's the
That's
thing.
exactly
You
right.
don't know.
That's exactly right.
Look, I get it. I know that I'm moralistic and I know I'm idealistic, but again, this all comes back to, for me, and by the way, I'm not, by conveying what I'm saying, I am not saying anybody else is wrong for the way they go about it. This is specific to me. But Barbara right before said she's not going to hide being neurodiverse on a job interview. I'm not going to hide that when it comes up with the disability question. I say, yes, I do have a disability. But Barbara and I are the exception to the rule.
Mhm.
Without more people standing up for what's right and fair, like us, nobody's going to have that opportunity. So I have to stick above and above the norm, out and above the norm, to set the right example so that when my kids in 15 years, 20 years are applying for jobs, that they are in a somewhat less biased environment, then that's what I'm going to do. And again, I can sleep at night. That doesn't mean I'm not desperate for money. That doesn't mean I'm not going to take what I need to support my family.
Yeah.
But I'm going to stand up for what I feel is right. And Ellie, this is one of the reasons why I've had a hard time finding roles, because I am so out there with my opinions, specifically when it comes to these topics. I know there's a polarization factor. I am a guy that talks about sexual assault, violence, domestic violence, the fact I have eating disorder and body dysmorphia. This is stuff that doesn't get talked about. I'm the guy that talks about how I think companies are stupid for looking for culture fit instead of culture ad. But if I
never heard that term. Thank you. Culture ad. I like that.
Culture ad is the main difference, without being intentional in gaslighting, is culture fit. In the most basic principle is when you're trying to find the same as everything else. Mm-hmm. Culture ad is when you actively go about to find something that you don't already have in the organization. Right. And to me, that's when you look for culture ad, that's increasing the ability of having diversity in your organization. It's creating more fair and equitable society. And it takes a part in helping reduce the gender and racial wealth gap. So I'm all about culture ad.
Thank you.
How about we end it here?
Sounds like a plan.
This was a very interesting conversation, which we probably should pick up again at some point. Dan, Barbara, thank you. And Wendy and Ellie, thank you very much for being here.
Absolutely.
I didn't think this was going to be like bringing the Red Sox and the Yankees together.
I was really having me, Ken.
I love how we have these plans that this is what we're going to talk about, and it goes.
It's my fault. I'll take the blame.
I have 2:00. Nice to talk to everybody.
Nice to talk to
you too, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Jump on a call soon.
Take care.
Right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Last thing I really quickly want to say,
Mhm.
he's gone. I did want to apologize to Ellie because I didn't mean for it to come across so negative.